recording. I think Matt started the recording. I'm Justin Tooley. I'm the acting director for the Office of Innovation and Entrepreneurship. I'm joined by Carla Garrett, who runs our workforce team at EDA. It's good that everyone is here with us today. All right. The purpose of this webinar is to learn about the data impact and evaluation requirements that are in our AI Upskill pilot program Notice of Funding Opportunity. Our Notice of Funding Opportunity has been out on the street for a little over a month. We're about halfway to our application deadline. We'll cover that at the end of the webinar. This will also cover our data reporting expectations for awarded grantees. We won't be able to give you sort of every single detail around our data collection, but we do want to give you enough information so you can prepare your application and then know what to expect going forward if you are awarded. This webinar is a part of a series of webinars that we've had over the past several weeks about our Notice of Funding Opportunity. This is sort of getting at sort of the advanced studies portion of our NOFO technical assistance. You can find all of the technical assistance webinars recorded on our website. We have one that sort of covers the NOFO at a high level. We have one over budget. We have one over developing your strategy. We have one over submitting your applications. Make sure that you are using those. The recordings and the slide decks are online. As far as an agenda for today's webinar, we're going to talk about our evaluation focus. So I will kick that off. We'll talk about the application requirements. We'll talk about data collections, and we'll talk about what we are contemplating for program evaluation. All right, you've seen this slide several times now, but this is sort of the storyboard that we put together when thinking about your putting together your application package. So again, the ask that we have of applicants is to propose a sectoral partnership between entities eligible for funding under the AI addendum and employers that will design and provide training to incumbent workers and new hires in industry aligned AI skills. So you've seen this slide several times, but we ask you to describe the sectoral partnership, to describe the need for AI training in the focus industry and in your region. We tell you to design a project of activities and a budget. Tell us what will work. Today's webinar covers this fourth box here, which is describing the benefits for the workforce and participating employers. So today we're going to focus on, all right, you've described to us who's in your sectoral partnership. You've described to us your strategy and your need. And now we're ready to hear, like, what will we get out of this project if it is implemented well? Next slide. So this is a pilot program. We were charged in the President's Artificial Intelligence Action Plan to use our authority, our statutory authority, to design a workforce program for artificial intelligence skills. We know that artificial intelligence is impacting the way that we live and work, and it's a rapidly evolving space. But we're using this as an opportunity to learn more, which will hopefully be used to inform future government interventions, both for EDA, the Department of Commerce, and the government as a whole. So this slide is like, what are we trying to get out of this this funding opportunity and these funded applications? So one, we want to understand the extent that the field, so training providers, employers, and other organizations are ready for workforce training in AI skills. So when we've talked about sort of those criteria, those questions that we're asking you, like pick an industry, tell us how it's using AI in your field, tell us what workforce skills, tell us what the benefits to the business are. That is the information that we're trying to get an understanding of just how ready are all of these different players in the workforce ecosystem are ready to answer those questions and to develop strategies to respond. Secondly, for pilot grantees, what is the impact of AI on business and training of workers? So artificial intelligence implemented in businesses, that is probably for some benefit to the business. What exactly are those benefits? Is it increased productivity? Is it increased efficiency? Is it lower cost? we're trying to get an understanding of just what is the impact of artificial intelligence on the business's outcomes. We're also wanting to understand what is the impact of training on workers. So what does that do to their wage? What does that do to maybe their prospects for keeping a job or being placed in a job? And then finally, this is going to be an opportunity for trying to glean some best practices for workforce training and artificial intelligence skills. So we know that a lot of different institutions, including us at EDA, we're thinking about how to train our workforce for using artificial intelligence on the job effectively. We are hoping to get a better understanding of just what are those best practices that work for workers that we can share with the field for future implementation. We're going to answer these questions. Oh, sorry. Can we go back one more? Through in several ways. So one, through the applications themselves. Applications are important for determining who's going to win grant funding. That's important. I know that's important to everyone on this phone call, but it's also a good opportunity for the government to get an understanding of the readiness of the field and to take some of the information that you provide to us aggregated across applications to just sort of see like what is going on in sort of the landscape of training providers in this space. Secondly, we will cover in this webinar what we're thinking about as far as data reporting. And then finally, we will be contracting a program evaluator for this program to use some of that data and also some of the reporting that you'll have to do on your grants, the applications, to help us make sense of just what the impact of this program is on businesses and the workforce. Now you can go to the next slide. So again, this graphic sort of shows what we're trying to get out of this pilot is for the recipients of this federal funding. What are the business outcomes? What was the impact of using AI on business outcomes and then worker outcomes? What was the impact of the training on workers? And then also always looking for best practices that we can use to advance this work. I think that's all for the introduction. Glad everybody is on the phone with us. I'm going to kick it off to our workforce lead, Carla Garrett, and she's going to walk through in more detail some of the NOFA requirements around data.
Thank you, Justin. All right, so starting off, this is a slide that you've seen in previous webinars and also outlined within our notice of funding opportunity, that all proposals must identify a special need. This is a requirement for every single application, no matter if you're starting at system development or program implementation. And so for the AI Upskill program, that special need is articulating the need for AI training in the proposed region. And there are 4 key elements of special need that you must address. So starting with the significance of the industry your project will focus on and why it matters economically to your region. Then identifying the existing use of AI, where you're describing how employers have already adopted AI tools, systems, workflows, and ideally this is supported by providing examples from participating employers and including evidence of AI product usage within your application. And then you're identifying why AI is critical for the industry's competitiveness. So that could be how AI affects productivity, growth, and market position of the industry or employer, and what risk if workers aren't properly trained in these AI skills to utilize the AI technologies. And then closing the loop with articulating the workforce training need. What is the skill gap? What specific competencies are missing? What tasks or roles are being transformed that make this training necessary? And how many workers will need upskilling or be impacted by this? What tasks have employers identified workers are not yet performing or could perform better? So when these elements are addressed with the data, the supporting data, you're building a foundation to articulate the need for this federal investment, and your proposals activities likely become more clear and then translate into practical steps. Which then leads us to the activities that will address the needs you've just articulated. So as you're mapping out activities, you should constantly check, do these activities directly address the AI workforce need you've articulated in your special need? Do you have the right entities at the table to carry out these activities? If you do, identifying who they are. If you don't, identify how you'll go about selecting and determining what's the right entity, pulling them into the sectoral partnership. Are these activities in the right order? Is this timeline realistic? And I would even suggest, if you utilize this table as a tool in your planning, that you may add a fourth column around the data to be captured with each activity. Now, there are some learnings that can happen with each activity. Some will be reported to EDA, as we'll talk through in the coming slides. And some of those learnings can provide you with key insights that further support industry or workforce infrastructure development beyond this project. So we've seen organizations stand up workflows that were developed under an EDA workforce investment that are now incorporated into the standard practice of the organization. So there could be data points here that are helpful to you in the long term, not just what is reported to EDA. So once your activities are crisp and identified, the next step is identifying who will help you execute. And this is where we see your employer and stakeholder partners engaged. And we're tracking that through some commitments and how you identify them within your proposal. So if we go back to that chart in the beginning where we showed you the different steps describing the sectoral partnership, identifying the need and identifying the activities in your budget, now talking about the outcomes, ideally they're all lining up. So when we talk about outcomes here, we're really getting at the quality and execution of the activities you've laid out. So the numbers absolutely matter, but what matters as equally is whether your project is designed solid enough so that your activities can actually deliver those outcomes. So we encourage you to keep the outcomes ambitious yet achievable. So we do expect real world variation in these projects. Every proposal will be different. There'll be some strong components, some not as strong components. And then in the awarded projects, what we've often seen is there is a need for adjustments. And some of the attempts won't fully operationalize in the way that it's originally written. So we'll assess that throughout the period of performance. But here in the application stage, we're not assessing for a perfect framework. We're assessing whether your concept is well structured enough that your activities have a high likelihood of generating meaningful evidence and lessons. So when you propose,
I'm gonna pause in here and sort of double click on this again. It's like this is a really important slide. I think one of the things that we see a lot is that yes, this is a competitive competition. And what people end up doing is sort of promising like all of these job placements or all these completions or all of this investment or all and but when it comes time for us to, we award and then we're working on scope of work or we're starting to monitor the award and we go back to the application for those numbers, it's like, oh, that's too hard, or oh, that was too rosy, or oh, that was too ambitious. We are going to hold awardees accountable for what they put in this application, like in their application. So if you promise me 500 job placements, and then when we make an award and we're starting to like get down to implementation, and now you're like, oh, maybe 300 was more realistic. We're gonna have some questions. We're gonna have some questions about that. The other piece too is, the entire application holistically should be aligned. Like if you say, 500 job placements, but your employer commitments aren't really there to support 500 jobs available, that would lead us to sort of ask some questions about that. So this slide is really important to make sure that your activities and your commitments and your outcomes are all talking to each other, that there's no inconsistency, that they're sort of moving all in the same direction. All right, Carla, back to you.
Thanks. So echoing Justin on that. So we're going to be assessing your activities and do you have the commitments in place that will support those activities and support the outcomes you've identified. And So understanding we have projects that can start at different phases. So you've got a phase one system development where you're codifying your sectoral partnerships, and then program design where you're assessing the curriculum and what's needed to implement the project and the training that you've outlined, and then program implementation, which every project will have to include this in the proposal. And so if you're starting at the beginning in system development, we still expect to see meaningful and early commitments. So things like employers agreeing to validate draft occupational profiles or participate on an advisory group or pilot a work-based learning experience as the training becomes more final. These early stage commitments still matter, and they show that employers are genuinely invested in shaping and ultimately using the sectoral partnerships pipeline, even if at time of application, the partnership's not fully mature. So this applies to projects and sectoral partnerships at all stages, but just keep in mind that your activities plus your partner commitments should yield your outcomes, and these outcomes should be ambitious yet achievable. So within the project narrative, we've included some recommended tables to list the employer partners that are or will be part of your sectoral partnerships. So employers are committing to the success of the project and providing insights and input on the use case of the impact of AI-enabled technologies and business outcomes for utilizing AI. So we'll be using the information that's shared here to survey those businesses to check on the status of that information. And at the time of application, you should list the employers that have committed to the project. Understanding this list can change and evolve for awarded projects, as we've seen sectoral partnerships grow after funding has been awarded. This will work with awarded projects to continue to update. We also do recognize there's a page limit on the project narrative, and the longer the table, that could take up some narrative real estate. So recommend that you include your key employer commitments here in this table. And maybe after the fifth employer commitment, you start including at minimum their name, address, EIN, and then the commitment letter, which we'll talk about later. Ensure that it's robust in the description of the commitment and the relevance of that commitment. And here, this slide is just providing you with some background information on the employer identification number, or EIN, and where it could be found. And it could just be helpful as you're going into conversations with employers to obtain this information, and then help them understand why it's important and how it will be used in this project. So also within the project narrative, we've included a recommended table to list the stakeholder partners that will be part of the sectoral partnership. So who are these other relevant stakeholders? We can refer back to the sectoral partnership makeup. The supporting organizations here that are in yellow or could appear gold are those organizations that are key to delivering your project activities and could be your other relevant stakeholders. Now, again, after award, this list could grow, and EDA will continue to work with those awarded projects to update. But I think this is another point where we want to emphasize quality over quantity here, and what's going to be effective for your sectoral partnership to meet the outcomes of the award, but also deliver on the training that's needed that you've identified for your region. Commitment letters for both employers and relevant stakeholders must be included in the application. Recommend that you take a look at page 54 of the AI addendum for additional information. And all letters should be uniquely personalized for each organization. Again, we're using these letters to measure the credibility of the activities you've proposed. So stock language really wouldn't support us in understanding the level of commitment or how these partners will contribute to the project. They should also describe the commitment and relevance that the commitment of the organization's commitment to the project. They should provide the strategy that that organization is going to take up in the project, and on the organization or employer's letterhead and signed by an authorizing representative of that organization or company. Now, employer letters have some additional things that should be included in there. So presented here is not a comprehensive list, but it includes hiring commitments or the commitments to engage the sectoral partnerships training pipeline in meaningful ways. Also describe how the employer is presently utilizing AI technologies and how it will benefit the industry or the employer. Again, for the full list of what should be included in your employer letters, see page 54 of the AI addendum. So at the beginning, Justin mentioned that we're looking at worker outcomes, business outcomes. That'll also be described in the AI addendum as worker benefits. So all applications should include or must include the number of individuals that will be enrolled into the program, the number of individuals who successfully complete that training program, and the number of individuals that will be placed or retained in employment. The number of participant broken down by occupation type. So if you're focused on that industry and there are several occupations that will be a focus in your training program, inputting that information and the average wage and benefits for workers in that region before and after training. So where they're starting and then ultimately where they end up. Again, emphasizing the importance of your sectoral partnership and ensuring that the right partners are at the table to help you put this information together is going to be critical. And here's a sample table that we've included in the materials, the AI addendum, where you can input that information directly into there. These are suggested figures, again, emphasizing that these goals should be ambitious yet achievable. And what is put here is going to be what's incorporated into awarded project scope of work. So that is what we're going to be monitoring these projects towards and holding the awarded applicants accountable to. So we want to make sure that you take the time to really understand what those outcomes should be and can be. Employer benefits. So again, at the beginning, we talked about business outcomes that will translate into employer benefits. So applications should identify what these anticipated benefits are. Again, emphasizing that in your sectoral partnership should be employers that can assist you in understanding this. You should be hearing from them. These are the benefits of the AI training or the AI enabled tools, and this is what we're looking to track. These are the benefits we're looking to get out of the use of these technologies and having a skilled workforce that can assist and be capable of using these technologies. And we've included a sample table in the AI addendum where you can input this information. Again, this information too will be incorporated into awarded project scopes of work. I'll take a pause here and pass to Justin to discuss about the evaluation, sustainability, and scalability. And Justin, you're muted.
I don't know. I lost the screen for just a second. I was in the chat. There's a lot of really good questions in the chat, and I think they're all kind of like stemming from this idea of like, well, some of the questions that you're asking are for people that aren't starting in system development that might be sort of more advanced. What I would suggest there is one, and I think we've covered this in other webinars, is one, give us what you have and tell us like this is going to be our approach for getting this information, right? Is like, so I think there's a question here about like, what if we don't have all of our employers like set up yet because we're doing system development activities. I think you would tell us that, tell us what, like, if there's any that you do have, tell us, and then we would want to know, like, what are going to be your steps in system development to get that information. And we would think about, all right, do they have a reasonable plan in system development for this to like go through sort of the rest of the phases to be a very strong project and deliver outcomes later on. I think there's a question. Are there any eligibility limitations of evaluation advantages related to the size of participating employers, large, middle, or small businesses? We're agnostic to the types of businesses. I think we're looking for an award portfolio that is reflective of many different industries. So, like, not all healthcare, or not all manufacturing, or not all finance. We want a diverse type of industries to be reflective because this is a pilot. We want to be able to learn. But also, we are not prescriptive about the size of employers. I think some people might have sort of large employer partners, some might have medium or small. That is not a factor of a good strategy is a good strategy, no matter the type of businesses. I'll get to this last question here in a minute. It's a little long, so I can't like quickly read it, but I will cover this slide. So again, this is a pilot, and we're trying to learn from this. I think somebody wrote a very nice blog about our opportunity to be like, EDA is doing some work around AI, and it doesn't sound like they're sure, but offering the opportunity to learn from it, and that's exactly what we're trying to do here. We are not. We also posted a blog on our website this week where we talked last week where we talked about us not being prescriptive, because we're really looking at this as an opportunity to learn in a time of very, very, very fast change. But there's a few things that are tucked in at the end of the NOFO requirements that I wanted to make sure that we give some attention to. Is future evaluation and scalability. So one is we want to understand, like, what is the value of this sort of your project? What might we learn about it? Who might be interested in it? What might be good things for us to take away from it? Like, why should we make an investment in your project? Because it is worthy of learning something from. That's what this question, this section is getting to. So we have a requirement here about this funding opportunity is a focus on projects that can be evaluated rigorously during and after the period of performance to inform best practices and support the scaling and replication of successful programs, models, and approaches. That is why we are taking this approach both internally, but also looking for applicants to be thoughtful about how they're going to do that themselves as well. Next slide. So future evaluation. This is in section 8 of the project narrative. So one, describe how the proposed project and lessons learned from program implementation could be valuable to other regions, industry, or employers. This is your opportunity for you to tell me, if you make this investment, we think that this project would be worthy of funding because we're going to be able to learn these things and it might be applicable in the future to this. Make an argument. Tell me like the value proposition here of like, hey, there's other communities that might benefit from this in this sector, et cetera. Describe an approach that the applicant, if awarded, will pursue to rigorously evaluate the impact of project activities on employee and business outcomes after the period of performance. So I outlined our evaluation strategy. We want to see how you are also going to use this as a learning opportunity for you as well. Next slide. Scalability. This is also in section 8 of the project narrative. We asked this a lot in many of our competitions. So describe how the proposed project is taking a unique approach to developing workforce skills in AI. That's something we've covered. But describe how the approach taken in the proposed project will enable broader use and replication or expansion across the workforce system. Again, getting this idea of like, how can this be beneficial to others? Next slide. And then lastly, sustainability. Describe an approach to sustain core program activities beyond the federal period of performance. So you've done it, you've evaluated it, you see what works, what doesn't work, maybe you refined it. What is going to be your strategy for preserving this into the future? So are there other funding sources that you contemplate? Are there additional institutional commitments and things from your other partners? And then exactly how are you thinking about keeping this going on to the future after EDA investment? Like, we're not looking for projects that this is sort of a one-time thing depending on our funding. We want to see these have some staying power into the future to really build capacity, uh, and to also like learn from in the future. Next slide.
All right, and we'll talk a little bit about how we will collect some of this data. So we talked about the worker outcomes or worker benefits. And so EDA has a workforce collection tool that we do utilize in partnership with Census. And so on an annual basis for awarded applications, or awarded projects. We will be collecting participant information on the training programs and providers that will be participating and delivering the training. Also, the employment status of those participants. So where you have some individuals that are coming in and they're unemployed or underemployed, we would want to see what their status is after training. Are they placed in employment? For incumbent workers, what is the difference there? They came in with a certain skill set, or at making a certain wage. Is there a wage increase after training? So we will want to monitor that for awarded projects. An employer questionnaire. So we talked in the beginning about collecting the employer information, their name, their address, their EIN, to help support or understand what are the impacts of this training on the business. And so we intend to utilize those employers that are part of your sectoral partnership that have committed to follow up on that information via an employer partner questionnaire, where we would look for those committed employers to provide that information annually through a questionnaire that will be provided from EDA. And then pre-training, post-training for participants, a participant questionnaire. And that's just looking to gauge where they are in relation to AI, their familiarity, their understanding before training, and then give them an assessment post-training to see what improvements have been made, what has been the impact of that training. Again, this questionnaire will be provided by EDA, and we'll work with awarded applicants on how we administer that questionnaire. But this is just giving you an idea as you think about the activities and your partners. This is some of the required information that we will be collecting, and the collection methods that awarded applicants can expect to utilize. Also, upon award, project goals from the application are incorporated into your scope of work. So again, as we talked about the worker benefits, worker outcomes, employer benefits, business outcomes, those will be incorporated into your scope of work and what EDA will be using to monitor the health and the success of your award. Progress must be reported on these goals up to 5 years after award start date. Don't panic. Projects can run anywhere from 2 to 3 years. And so this is saying from award start date. So there could be where you're submitting some of this information 2 years after your award ends, or if your project is extended for whatever reason, it could just be the entire duration of your period of performance. And this is not a heavy lift, and we will work with awarded applicants to fully understand this and what this can look like so that they are properly prepared to submit this information. Grantees can operationalize requirements according to state regulations, sectoral partnerships, local ecosystems. And so here we mean working with your state to obtain some of this data. We've had some awarded projects work with their state systems that are collecting some of this data, and they've entered into MOUs or agreements with these organizations that collect that information to help support the reporting of these projects. This too could be an area where you look at your sectoral partnership to see, do you have any partners included that could help support this information and leverage those resources. And of course, each project will have a dedicated program officer to help provide some technical assistance and connect organizations to best practices or subject matter experts. And it is allowable to utilize EDA funds for data reporting. And we would work with awarded applicants on what's reasonable here and what that can look like. Lastly, just going over that's all of the curated content we have here. So some competition resources available to you. The overview webinar, a series of webinars that we've conducted. They're all listed here. They all can be found on our website. And so these webinars were designed to build off of one another and support you in your to thoughtfully think through your program design. And so encourage you to take a look at those webinars and help them and let them help guide you in your discussions and how you're putting together a well-designed, thoughtful project proposal.
So Carla, before you dismiss everybody, can you go back a few slides back to where we had the colorful things here? I think there's some good questions in the chat that I want to make sure everybody sort of sees. So again, these are at a high level the data collections that we are working on building. We don't have the information to you today about all the specific questions or the collection mechanism, but this would be this would be a requirement of the lead entity to ensure that their sectoral partnership is reporting this information. There might be a state of the world where, like the EDA workforce collection, the leads are responsible for that. That's an existing data collection. This employer partner questionnaire, this is evolving a little bit. It could be something to where the businesses are able to submit that directly, or it rolls up through the lead. We're not 100% sure at this stage of the game, but it would be something at a bare minimum where we would want the lead entity to be like, look, you got to make sure your businesses are providing this data to us. The program participant questionnaire, probably where this makes the most sense is like it would be something that the training providers do since they're on the front line of providing the training. But we would want to make sure lead entities would be responsible for making sure that through whatever mechanism that we collect this information, that it gets to us and people comply. So it's not like we're going to put the responsibility on this with the lead entity, but we will have some systems to help support you in doing that. There's also some good questions in here about our expectations around evaluation rigor. Look, I don't expect us to win the Nobel Prize for economics on this. You never know. But I think here you tell us what is reasonable. I think we want to see sort of your openness to evaluation. We want to see sort of what you're thinking about. There might be a state of the world. I think Nanda asked this question too. There might be a state of the world where we are working with some partners at NIST on some of these AI evaluation questions where we are able to sort of connect other external evaluators to our awarded recipients for some of this. So I think answering the questions of why this project is interesting, what value and learning can we get out of it, your openness to evaluation, how you're thinking about evaluating yourself, making sure that you have good a good approach to sort of being like good buy-in to where your sectoral partnership is going to be good at providing this information and data to us. That's the stuff we're looking at now. But we're not looking for I don't need you to propose me like a research methodology or anything at that level at this stage of the game. What if employers aren't comfortable sharing PII? Shannon, this is that's something you're going to have to gauge with your employers. Like we are looking at our workforce collection on individuals is protected. We don't get the individual information. That stuff goes to census. Employers, it's their prerogative on what data that they're comfortable in sharing. If they are very, very restrictive on filling out some of this information, then that's going to limit our ability to collect data and learn. I think we've been pretty transparent about that is our interest here. If an entity developed curriculum previously and wants to deliver that training, does the training become public domain? If they develop curriculum, Trisha, I'm not going to do this one just off the cuff. We'll get you an answer to that. I think I'll make sure that a lawyer sort of reviews that one. 100 to 1,000 through training and would not want to provide all of the participants. It's too much work. Hey, I think this question around sort of employer willingness to send trainers, that's good that they're participation, but this is a federal award. We have an interest in wanting to get learnings from this. That is like we will expect this data, like the data that we are asking for to be submitted. That might be something you want to talk about through your employers. Okay.
I will
Go
I'll
ahead,
also go
Carla.
back to the question, Shannon, what you asked if employers aren't comfortable sharing PII. So to Justin's point, like it is something that is, like you can see, we will be collecting. We've also had some awarded projects collect this information in different ways. So it doesn't all have to come from the employer. Just depending on what the information is, you can see if that is something you can get directly from the participant. So encourage you to just take a look at what will be required and then what's the best way to go about collecting that information. But this is also why we're having the webinar so that you can have these conversations in this application, exploring part of the proposal with your partners to see what they like, what's required and what they're comfortable with, how you can go about collecting that information.
Okay.
Gotcha. Real quick. So Kimberly, gotcha. So within the application, the project narrative, we do state that there is a page limit, and that the only attachments that will be considered for review are the commitment letters, and there's not a page number on that. So the employer commitment letters and the partnership letters, they will be counted as the full application, but not go towards that 12-page limit. So the tables, if you want to include them in the appendix, but it won't be reviewed. So encourage you to include what you can within the body of the project narrative. Like again, we know that it can get pretty robust depending on how many partners you have. And so with the employers, we want you to list those that are committing and that information we're asking you to submit. And then because employers will also have commitment letters and your partnerships will also have commitment letters, making sure that information is included in the application. So it could be that it's included in the commitment letters. But yes, including it as an appendix, we won't review it. We have to hold to what the application says.
Elena is asking a good question. If a for-profit entity training provider is a strategic partner, can they also provide a bid if we do an RFP for contractors? So I think it just depends on what a strategic partner is. So if they are like writing your application for you, there are some rules about that as like a contractor. But a contract does have to be publicly procured. So you shouldn't make promises to those entities that they would receive that contract unless it's followed the proper procurement methods.
And there is we talked about this in the budget best practices and gosh, I'm blanking on the title of it, but the previous webinar that's posted, we did talk about this and our legal team did present on that. There's also a question on this in the frequently asked questions that's posted. If that information is not clear, there's still some questions, or there's a specific thing that you're wanting us to weigh in on, send us an email about that so that we can get you a response and consult with our legal team on that to get you the best response for that.
The devil is in the details on what a strategic partner.
Yeah.
That's the rationale. All right. So we have a lot of materials available to you. You know how to reach us through our OIE email inbox. We're doing our best to answer those emails. We will update our FAQs. I know this question around if you design a curriculum, like does it become in the public domain? I'm going to get you a better answer on that one. Look for that to be on the FAQs or send us an email in the OIE inbox. Carla, remind everybody the deadline again.
June 10th 2026 at 4:59 p.m. Eastern Time is the deadline to submit.
Oh, not June, not June, not June, not
Not
June,
June. I'm
July.
sorry,
You
July.
might have given
We
people a heart
passed
attack.
June.
We're past that.
July. Yes, Elena, thank you. July 10th, 2026 at 4:59 p.m. Eastern Time is the deadline to submit, and it's submitted through our platform, Edge. Our previous webinar, also submitting your application, is posted, walks you through how to do that. Recommend do not wait until the day of to start that process, because you do have to, if you've not had an award with us before, you'll have to register your organization, and that goes through a review itself, which could take 24 to 48 hours. So recommend getting that process started. Even if you don't know for sure if you're going to hit the submit button, getting yourself set up so that you are ready in case you do decide to submit, getting that process going. So yes, again, thank you, Jasmine. Put that in the chat. July 10th, 2026. My apologies.
Made some people nervous, Carla. But please use all of these competition resources. We recorded them. There's the decks, the FAQs, the one pagers. Like, use those as you work with your team. This is a place where my team we're just trying to get better at how we support applicants in building application quality. To make good funding decisions. We've got to get people the support that we need. NOFOs are very lengthy documents, and we want to make sure that we're trying to be a little bit more clear about how you write strong applications and giving people equitable access to that sort of consultative exercise and technical assistance. This is our last recorded webinar. So there won't be any more. So that could be a good thing for a lot of people. But if you have any feedback for us about like what was helpful, what wasn't helpful, feel free to also send that in the OIE email inbox. I think this is a place, again, where we are constantly looking for places to improve and support. All right. I think that's it.
That is all we have planned for today.
All right. Thanks, y'all.